the new theater of the mind. The Bruce Collins Show.
Welcome back to the Bruce Collins Show. We're very glad to have you join us. The Bruce Collins Show airs every Friday night at midnight right here at WWPR 1490 AM. You can listen to past archives of the Bruce Collins Show at fringeradionetwork.com. That's fringeradionetwork.com. There's a tab just for the Bruce Collins Show on the Fringe Radio Network website. We would appreciate it if you're able to spread the word for our show by word of mouth, social media, or in whatever creative way you can. Also, we have a Facebook page for the Bruce Collins Show. Please like us there, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line at Bruce_Collins_show at AOL.com. And let me bring in our co-host here. He's my colleague, friend, and co-host, a former congressional candidate in the state of Michigan, and a military veteran who is known as radio's lethal weapon, Mr. Chad Miles. Hey, Chad, how does it go when it goes as it does?
It goes very well, Bruce. Thank you.
Great.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, a couple weeks back, as you know, Chad, speaking of our Facebook page, I asked people to like a certain thread, and in so doing, I would read their names on the air. And so I wanted to say thank you to those that dropped us a line by liking our thread or replying in the comments underneath. Again, you can go to our Facebook page, The Bruce Collins Show. So I just want to read their names, and I hope I don't butcher anyone's name. But there's Bridget Blanche, thank you, Bridget. Robin Bryant, Valerie Silver, that's kind of an inside joke since she's the program manager at WWPR. Deborah Corvello, Mary Johnson, Ladam Rack, Chris Linos, Charles Duncan, Marianne Norwood, Reverend Dr. Annette Guerra, Lorenzo Gonzalez, Darlene Dax, David Wolf, Juan Reyna Jr., outstanding artist. Kevin E. Johnson, who's writing a book on the Book of Revelation. Pamela King. Rose Richardson, who said in the comments section that she works in neuropathology. Thank you for sharing that.
It's
Casey,
easy for you to say.
Yes, absolutely. Casey Constantine. Nathaniel XH, which I'm not sure how you pronounce XH. Adam Sane, and I think Adam Sane is the host of a show, Conspiranormal, at the Fringe Radio Network. Monica Morquecho, thank you, Monica. Kimberly King Evans, thank you, Kimberly. And Pat Moore, which I guess Pat Moore would be the opposite of Pat Less. Sorry, I didn't mean to make fun of your name. And so thank you all. Oh, and there, I can't forget Strokecopter Cassidy. Thank you, Strokecopter. So I want to thank all of you, and we probably will do this again sometime just for fun, and we'll ask you to like a certain thread and maybe mention your name on the air here at WWPR, the Bruce Collins Show. Now, this month, in keeping with doing away with the old, Chad, you know, I donated some of my garments, and but I had some trouble. Can you guess which garment I had trouble donating?
Your undergarments?
That's right. You know, my underwear was determined to be in a new class. Overworn. But that's okay. That suits me just fine. They'll work for me. For those of you who have been asking for my new book that's coming out about how to stop procrastination, due to my radio schedule, I will not be able to release that book until next year. And you know, Chad, I actually was going to hire for this show a full-time expert on Bigfoot and giants because they're so popular in culture today. You look on the History Channel and they have a show on giants. And the first thing this guy said was, before he would come on the show, he said, "You need to give me $250. And I said, "That's outrageous." But I paid him anyway. You know what he did? He bought a bus pass. He took that bus all the way down to the end of the street, and he was hiding in the clothes rack at the Big and Tall store. I told him, "Get out of there. You're going to embarrass me." You know what he wanted? Another $250. Can you believe that? That's crazy.
The craziest story I've heard all year.
It just might be. You know, I've been drinking this new drink. It's delicious.
It sounds like you have.
And on the label it says Arrowhead. It's great stuff.
Is it copper flavor?
Yes, it is. By the way, Chad, you know, I've been doing something behind the scenes. I've actually built I had a hardware store down the street that was going out of business, and they had some extra parts they were going to throw away. And I said, don't.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I said, don't throw those away. I said, I can use those. So I started tinkering around, and sort of like Madman Markham, I built my own time machine.
Really?
Yeah, and it's actually in this room right here in my studio. And if you want, I could press the button, and we could try to see if we could go back in time. I'll set it for maybe, say, 10 seconds backward in time. And that way, we won't go too far back. We won't go back to like the 1800s and then have no way of getting to the future. I'll just set it for 10 seconds, and then we'll check it out. So you want me to press the button?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. I'll just set it for 10 seconds, and then we'll check it out. So you want me to press the button?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. I'll just set it for 10 seconds, and then we'll check it out. So you want me to press the button?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. I'll just set it for 10 seconds, and then we'll check it out. So you want me to press the button?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Do you want me to press the button?
No, I don't think time machines work.
Yeah, what was I thinking? You're right. There's no such thing as time travel. Anyway, listen, folks, we've got a great program tonight that I believe you're going to enjoy. Our guests are Terry Irving and Louis Proud. Terry Irving is a 4-time Emmy Award-winning news producer, having worked for ABC, MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN, among others. And we're going to get an exclusive, candid interview of the news industry. Also joining us is Louis Proud. Louis Proud is a writer and researcher specializing in anomalous or Fortean phenomena. Some of his earliest and fondest memories are of watching his father conduct backyard science experiments involving Tesla coils and other electrical contraptions. One year, via a backyard experiment went wrong. Louis's father went from proud to awkward. Okay, I made that part up. No, it's Louis Proud. Anyway, Louis Proud studied writing and editing at Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. He wrote his first book, Dark Intrusions, an investigation into the paranormal nature of sleep paralysis experiences, while in his early 20s. Man, in my early 20s, I was just playing with slot cards. Anyway, receiving praise from Colin Wilson as one of the most acute commentators on the paranormal to appear in recent years. He gave up a career as a fitter and a machinist in an automobile factory in order to focus on his second book, The Dark Influence of the Moon, Alien Origins and Occult Powers. Now, his new book is Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions, The Science of the Unexplainable. And so tonight, we'll delve into the curious matter of strange electromagnetic dimensions, which I'm sure you will be interested to hear about. Personally, I'm a little bit skeptical, but it's kind of interesting. Chad, have you ever done any experiments with Tesla coils?
No, never.
I've seen women's hair wrapped up in Tesla coils. Isn't that when you get a permanent?
I used to listen to Tesla, the rock band. Does that count?
Yeah, that would count. Chad, thank you so much for joining us this week, and we'll be back with Terry Irving and Louis Proud in a moment. I'm very honored this week to welcome Mr. Terry Irving to the program. Terry Irving is a 4-time Emmy Award-winning writer and producer who has turned to fiction. He has worked live control rooms for ABC, CNN, Fox, and MSNBC on many of the biggest stories of the past 4 decades. He is the author of the exciting new thriller, Courier. Sam Donaldson, legendary ABC White House reporter, says, "Kudos to one of television's best producers for writing the thriller of the year." And Ted Koppel, anchor for NBC Nightline, now senior news analyst for NPR and contributing analyst to BBC World News America, writes, "If the phrase a crackling good yarn evokes an era before Twitter, Facebook, cell phones, videotape, DVDs, or cable television, welcome to Terry Irving's fast-paced thriller." High praise from 2 heavyweights in the news business. The author of Courier, Mr. Terry Irving, joins us. Terry, welcome to the Bruce Collins Show.
Thank you very much, and trust me, I don't deserve any of that praise. I really don't.
I think you do, and I think your book is great. I'm about a quarter of the way in, and it is.
Are you?
Yes, it is a page turner, and I should say you can get it on Amazon Kindle. That's what I'm reading it on, but you can also get a hard copy, of course. Now
you can get a paperback copy, and you can get it on Kindle.
Excellent. Now, Terry, given your impressive professional trajectory, is there anything that you've learned about the news business that would have surprised you when you were younger and inexperienced?
I like the concept of a trajectory, like an artillery gun. You know, it goes up and then it starts going down at the end. I have days when I regret it, and I wish I'd gone to law school or gone to be in banking and had millions of dollars like the other guys I went to college with. But I got to tell you, I had fun almost every day I went to work, and I think there's very few people who can really say that. Mm-hmm. I had fun when I was a motorcycle courier in 1973, although I nowhere near as cute as Rick Putnam, the hero in Courier. I mean, I was 21 years old, and somebody offered me, "Hey, we'll give you this BMW, and you ride it around all day, okay?" And I'm like, "And you'll pay me?" I mean, it's been like that ever since. I mean, we want you to cover the presidential campaign. Really? Cool. We want you to go and get shot at in Beirut. I mean, it has been a ball. It really has.
Mm-hmm. What, for maybe our young listeners, maybe they're in journalism departments and wanting to have a career in news, what was the best advice you ever received regarding success in journalism?
Don't give up. I mean, that's mainly it. I mean, it was funny. I was talking to somebody the other day, and at the network level, you never give up. I mean, you have a second and a third and a fourth fallback, and then you start getting creative. I mean, you figure out a way to do it in time, accurately, and hopefully with some beauty. And the thing is, if you do and you surround yourself with people in the same mind. When I worked for Nightline, 8 years, I worked with the smartest, most creative producers in the business. We didn't necessarily like each other, but they were phenomenal. And we played each other up, and we helped finish each other's pieces, and it made us all better. But if I was giving somebody advice right now about journalism, I'd probably say go to law school, and then maybe you can go to do journalism after you've got your degree. It's not good right now.
Yeah. So is there a fine line, in your opinion, between reporting the news and creating the news? And have you personally seen that line crossed during your career?
Oh, yeah, sure. And on all sides. I mean, I have, at some point, fairly early on, you realize that you can make people see whatever you want to make them see. If I want to make a candidate look bad, all I've got to do is use wide shots, and it won't look like there's that many people. If I want to make them look hot, I use tight shots with people and faces and grabbing hands. As a matter of fact, you almost can't, you have to do one or the other. Mm-hmm. The best, and what you end up having to do is to be honest and present as honest a portrayal of what actually happened as you possibly can. Now, I've looked at some of the stuff Michael Moore has done, and, I want to take a gun out. I looked at Andrew Breitbart. I mean, both sides, all sides, and they're taking what I consider to be not sacred, but something really important, and they're just messing with it. They're using it to make political points. Mm-hmm. Now, I said this to some people I was training. I said, the only thing that can keep you from doing the wrong thing is your own set of ethics. And that's it. I mean, if your ethics, are right, then you're going to, try to produce an honest show. And that's all you can really ask for.
In that same thought, when I think of Fox News, I think pro-Republican. When I think of CNN, I think pro-Democrat. Is my perception true or false? And if it is true, should media bias be an acceptable form of news, or is it just inevitable?
Well, I mean, you're halfway. I would say I don't have any doubt that Fox News is a functioning arm of the Republican Party. I would actually say if you watched CNN beat the living daylights out of Bill Clinton for 3 years over a bunch of non-stories, including Monica Lewinsky and Whitewater, I wouldn't say that they were terribly pro-democratic. CNN actually. MSNBC is pro-democratic because they needed to find a place to be, not for any kind of belief. CNN actually tries to play it down the middle. I think they try to find it's hard, what's true and what's interesting. But if everyone says they want straight news, but they don't want to watch it.
Right, but if I went and looked at some of their anchors, I could probably guess pretty wisely what their political persuasion is. That said, do you think that's true? I never knew which way what Ted Koppel thought. I worked for him for 8 years, and I really had no idea where he stood politically. I was surprised when Britt Hume, who I'd worked with for about 10 years, went over to Fox. And is an extremely conservative guy. A couple other people, same things. Yes, there are people, and I don't think it's right. There are people who allow their beliefs to affect what their journalism. I don't think it's right on any side because you can't be totally objective, but you do have to try. Yeah. One more question surrounding the news, because it's rare I get someone with your kind of perspective, and then we'll talk about the book specifically.
You have to understand, I really love being a journalist, and I always have, because I have the ability and the right to really believe that everybody's an idiot. And,
I can vouch for myself.
And make fun of both sides, and that's been the most fun that I have.
Yeah.
And all these years.
I can vouch for myself. Now, one of the questions I do have, as far as being an idiot, anyway, I'll move on. But when Donald Sterling's racist rant was released on the news, I noticed that this story was the headlines that night of every local news station and the national news also. As bad as his statements were, there were also murders and rapes that took place that day. So who decides when every station leads with the same story, or how do they all determine the same lead story?
If you sat, one of these days I'm going to write that up. If you sat, as I have, in the morning meetings where they talk about what they're going to cover that day. Mm-hmm. And if you've watched people, maybe you have, go through the day and try to pick out what are the lead stories. And I used to do it. I mean, I used to do shows for a number of different networks, and you just stop believing in some sort of conspiracy, because I mean, it's not. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we had a situation, I know when John F. Kennedy Jr.'s plane went down, some of the stuff with Princess Diana dying, the powers that be in the news business desperately tried to switch it to another story. They were pushing and shoving so hard. And the fact was that the American people would not allow it. They wanted to watch that story, and that story they got. And there's a lot of times, I think, that if you see a sort of a mass movement in one direction, it's because the people at the stations, at the networks know that if they show something else, people are going to turn them off and go watch that. So it's not as much a choice for the journalists as it is, you know, I mean, I was working for Aaron Brown, who's one that I loved, and he's a great writer.
Yeah.
And we had that, I can't remember her name, but that woman in Aruba, the girl who went missing.
Holloway.
And we covered her once or twice, and, you know, and then we went on and did other stories because we were trying to do the day's news. And we had our heads handed to us. Because all people really wanted to hear was about this woman in Aruba, and the other people, the other side, meaning Fox, was doing it night after night after night after night, and they just kicked. You know, and the problem with that for me is I hate doing that every day. I mean, doing the same story every day is incredibly dull and not really accurate. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I sort of got off the track.
No, I actually find that fascinating. Now, I want to talk about your book, Courier. One thing that you mentioned early on in this interview is that you were a courier starting out. So is this book more a story, or in a way, is it about you? Well, believe me, it ain't about me, because that was something I realized really early on, was that I couldn't, you know, if I wrote about me, it was going to be a real dull book. Rick Putnam is better looking, he's smarter, and he is a heck of a lot better motorcycle rider. No, you know, the part that I put in is, I was in 73, I was a motorcycle courier for ABC, and what I saw, what I felt, what I smelled is all still there. It was I was just out of college. It was almost my first job out of college, and man, everything is still there. I mean, I can still see it. I can feel it. I know what what the boards were like on top of the Metro. They were icy. And that's what's me. None of the rest of the story is me. Although, you know, usually I had to judge it by, did something similar happen, or was something, you know, where it's not fantasy. Mm-hmm. It's pretty solid, because somebody that I knew generally had done something that worked into the story. Why did you choose?
Why
did you choose the Nixon era?
Well, you know, it's funny. When I started out, I wanted to do a story about that time, and the reason is because that is so sharp in my mind. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought, well, I know what happened back there. And actually, the more that I researched it before I wrote the book, the more I realized that it was as different as writing about Victorian London or something. I mean, it was Civil War. I mean, there were no women, there were no blacks, there were no Mexicans or Asians, everyone smoked everywhere, everyone drank all the time. The sort of the mixing between the press and the politics was much more than it is now. And I mean, it was a different world. And then the other thing was, and this was something that actually surprised me, I have to have somebody, a bad guy, and the book is not about Watergate, and it's not really about Richard Nixon, but the more, and a lot of it came up just this July. These books came out, and it turns out that Richard Nixon really, really was a traitor. Mm-hmm. And it's not conservative, and it's not liberal, and it's not Republican, and it's not Democratic. He was an empty soul with nothing but political ambition, and he traded away the lives of 21,000 soldiers to win the election in '68. That's not in my book. It's something, I mean, I kept checking to make sure that my book, which is fiction, wasn't contradicted by the facts, and instead it got stronger and stronger and stronger. So, yeah, the book is about this guy, and he's come back from Vietnam. He was horribly wounded. and mentally and physically. And the people in 72, the vets that I knew, were not acting out and going out and living in the woods and playing Rambo. They were trying desperately to be normal. They thought they could just get over it like their parents have. Mm-hmm. And he is, he's trying to live a normal life, except that the only way he thinks he can do it is by cutting everybody out of it. And the question really is, can he let, anyone else inside and let people help him? And as it turns out, that's what saves his life, is these people are trying to kill him. He doesn't know why they're trying to kill him. It turns out to be part of Watergate, but
yeah.
That was what was going on. I mean, everything was Watergate back then.
Yeah, there's a lot of intrigue in your book surrounding a film and a CIA
mm-hmm.
agent, and a very exciting book. Now, interesting. You said Nixon. You characterized him as an empty soul, I believe. And when we look at politics today, whether it's from the right or from the left, it almost seems corrupt on both sides. Do you think this is more so today, or do you think that the news reporting has caused the Washington D.C. to become more transparent?
I absolutely do not think that. I mean, and I've been asked this, I think, every single time. Whatever we see today is nothing compared to Richard Nixon. Nothing. I mean, Richard Nixon owned the entire federal government in a way that nobody has since. And I think nobody tried to before that, but they put in, the Church Committee in 75, 76, put in enough new laws that nobody can get away with what Richard Nixon got away with. I mean, the just pure use of the government's power for political gain. Now, and the other part of it is that you had Woodward and Bernstein, you had them all, sort of being praised and lauded, and a whole generation of journalists came in, and I know that there's a feeling that they only go after one side, but man, they go after both sides. I mean, I don't think Obama's had an easy time. I know that George W. Bush didn't have an easy time, and Bill Clinton didn't have an easy time. I mean, mm-hmm. The press is now pretty rough on everybody, which is probably the good thing.
Being that you come from the background of traditional media, what's your thoughts about alternative media?
No, I come from both. I did
really?
.coms, and I don't know how much more alternative you can get. I used to work for this guy named Don Amos for 3 years. My attitude is that you will not get the truth or anything remotely resembling the truth from any one source. You won't get it from PBS. You won't get it from the BBC. You won't get it from Fox. You won't get it from the, I can't even think of the MSNBC or the Progressive Now. But you will get it if you have a wide range of voices, and we have probably a wider range of possible. You could obviously you can go watch the ISIS channel if you want to. Mm-hmm. We have a wider and probably clearer view of the world now than ever before. Just because you can watch or listen to or read a wider spectrum of views, and out of that you synthesize the truth. I mean, that's just the only way to do it. You can't get anything accurate from one point of view.
Yeah.
At least I don't think so.
Right. Now, again, your book is Courier, and this book is set in the 70s. Today, technology has advanced to the point where social media seems to take a prominent role in the reporting and dissemination of the news. What has this done to the traditional print and televised media, and are they doing anything to try to bring back some of the viewers and listeners and readers that they've lost?
Well, I'm so old that they were shooting the news on film. I mean, real film, and that's That was the whole story. That's why they had couriers. They had to bring it back. Yeah, it has utterly changed everything. You can probably stand there with your telephone and do everything that used to take 5 people to do back in 72. I mean, you can record and shoot and feed. And has that changed things? Yeah. It's most of my friends are out of work.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a whole lot of people, and you know, and this is sort of the inevitable generational change. But you've got places like Bloomberg or CNBC or that you know that can just pay attention to one thing. You've got ESPN that just does one thing and does it in more of depth than we could ever do it. It's a massive change. And I was, you know, a fair amount of fact, although I got into it too early and we were all going out of business. And the essentials stay the same. It's still all about writing something that is as accurate as you can, and maybe if you're lucky, well written as well. Getting pictures and trying to make them tell a story as best as you can. I mean, make them beautiful if you're lucky. Mm-hmm. You know, it is still about putting out, I don't want to say the truth because nobody ever does, but getting as close to it as you can. Mm-hmm. And for the public, I mean, the public, it used to be that, you know, they would have one newspaper and they would read a paper and it was owned by a guy who owned it, you know, I mean, it was owned by a political party. I mean, yeah. You know, Pulitzer and Hearst weren't angels. They, you know, their papers towed the line and said exactly what they wanted them to say. Mm-hmm. And, you know, any thought that it was otherwise is just fooling yourself. But it's tough for those who are in the business. I mean, it's amazing to me how many of my friends who worked long years at CNN and ABC and NBC are now working for Chinese Central Television or Al Jazeera America. But on the other hand, that's the nature of a global society. You've got networks now fighting it out to see who's going to be the leading global news channels. Mm-hmm. The BBC and CNN are sort of figured to be the two, and who's going to be the third. And man, there's a battle for that right now, and that's good. I mean, it was a network that came up out of Africa for a while, and it failed, but I mean, that's what generally happens. But, you know, again, the more you get to see somebody else's point of view, I think, the better it is.
Yeah, I know Ali Velshi was one of the folks that left for Al Jazeera. And yeah, on YouTube, I've seen a few rants out there, and without naming names, just asking a general question, are by and large news anchors prima donnas?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like somebody said, is such and so an egomaniac? And I said, yeah, of course he is. I mean, he's an anchor. He feels like he has the right to talk to 6 million people, and they should listen to what he says. It's just a question of whether he's a nice guy to work with. Yeah. Yes. I mean, one of the requisites to being anyone on television is having the gut feeling that what you say is, you know, important enough that millions of people should hear it. Mm-hmm. And most of us in this world don't really have that feeling, you know, or at least not the same way. Right. You know, and if you're lucky, I mean, Ted Koppel, frankly, is and was smart enough that he deserved it. I mean, I really honestly think that Koppel, he should have been heard every day. Mm-hmm. You know, I think the show that we did, unfortunately, it got worse ratings than the show they're doing now, but I think we added up the end of the day, and we're a part of the news, part of the way the world worked in a way that nothing is right now. I thought we did a good job. Now maybe Jon Stewart's doing the right job, or, I can't think of who else sort of wraps things up, maybe Bill O'Reilly. But, all prima donnas, well, I have known a number of prima donnas. I have to tell you, the prima donnas mostly aren't as good. It's when they're, we used to refer to them as high maintenance.
Yeah.
But if they were high maintenance, high performance, that was okay, like an F1 car. But if they were high maintenance, low performance, like a really bulky VW, then it was bad. It was a pain. And he couldn't write his own scripts, then that was not worth the effort.
Yeah.
But and you've been around the business long enough to know that most people in the media work about 4 times as hard as anybody else. Mm-hmm. I mean, I used to have the guys, and honestly, newspaper guys don't work hard. They do. But I mean, newspaper guys would come up and say, we can't believe how much work you do to get your pieces out every day. It's also because 99% of the people in the news business like what they do. And they would probably, they used to say about Sam Donaldson, if he wasn't able to be on television, he'd go door to door and tell people the news.
That's dedication. The author of Courier, Terry, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you.
The pleasure was mine. Joining me right now is my guest, Louis Proud. He's the author of Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions. Louis, welcome to the Bruce Collins Show. And if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your book.
My latest book, which is called Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions, The Science of the Unexplainable. It's my 3rd book. It's published by New Page, and it was released in November 2014. I'm a writer and researcher on Fortean, or paranormal phenomena. I currently live in Darwin, Australia, and over the years I've explored a lot of different topics in the paranormal field, including sleep paralysis, psi, which includes such things as psychokinesis and telepathy, as well as poltergeists, UFOs, and just about everything else. And I've always believed that the best way to study the paranormal is from a scientific perspective. And by that I mean a fun and open-minded scientific perspective, not a narrow-minded, mechanistic scientific perspective. So that's the approach I try to employ with my research and writing on these topics. But back to my latest book. Now, as the title suggests, the theme of the book is electromagnetism. And the significance of the title relates to the fact that pretty much every aspect of the paranormal, I've discovered, has an electromagnetic dimension to it. And besides examining a number of paranormal topics in relation to electromagnetism, I also look at a host of rather less spectacular topics. And I begin with the topic of magnetoception.
What is magnetoception?
Well, it's the ability to detect and navigate via the Earth's magnetic field. And it's an ability that's been observed in a huge number of life forms on Earth, including fruit flies, honeybees, homing pigeons, cows, sharks, sea turtles, and even bacteria. So we know that this ability exists in very simple life forms and very complex life forms. But what about human beings? Could we in fact be making use, without necessarily being conscious of it, of a magnetic sixth sense? No doubt an ability like this would have been of great benefit to our hunter-gatherer ancestors. If they did possess this ability, what about modern humans? Does it still exist in humans, even though we're not necessarily using it as much, or we don't have a reason to use it? Well, amazingly, there is some evidence that modern humans possess this ability. There's evidence, for example, that the human brain and the human ethmoid bone contains traces of the magnetic mineral magnetite. So could there be magnetite-loaded cells in the human body which are designed to respond to external sources of electromagnetism, including the Earth's magnetic field?
Tell us, Lewis, if you would, about the research of Dr. Robin Baker.
Dr. Robin Baker was a biologist at Manchester University. He's still around, but he's not active in this area anymore. But he did a series of experiments throughout the 1970s whereby he placed blindfolded children on buses and he drove them around the countryside, took them on long, winding trips throughout the countryside in order to basically disorient them. And then, with the blindfold still on, he took them off the bus and got them to point in the direction of home. He discovered that in many cases the children could point in the direction of home despite still being blindfolded. He obtained some very impressive results, a lot of amazing evidence that humans do possess this ability. And although few scientists have bothered to try and reproduce Baker's experiments, lately there's been a lot of focus by scientists on this light-sensitive protein called cryptochrome. And we know that cryptochrome controls circadian rhythms in plants and animals. We also know that it plays a role in magnetoception in fruit flies and many other living things. And it turns out that the human retina is packed with cryptochrome. It also turns out, because an experiment has proven this, that human cryptochrome functions as a magnetic sensor in fruit flies that have been genetically engineered to lack their own version of cryptochrome.
Talk about geomagnetic disturbances. How do you believe that affects humans?
In order to properly examine this question, it's important to realize that we live in a sea of electromagnetic energy. And this is made up of both natural sources, like the Earth's magnetic field, and Schumann resonant signals, as well as artificial sources, for example, from cell phones, electrical appliances, power lines, and so on. And by far the most important natural source of electromagnetism is the Earth's magnetic field. Although it's something we take little notice of, the Earth's magnetic field is extremely unstable. It's always changing. And this is thanks in part to the activity of the sun and various other cosmic factors, including lunar factors, which is something I deal with in my book, The Secret Influence of the Moon. But anyway, moving on, there are, for example, solar storms, which can cause big disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field, otherwise known as the geomagnetic field. And every living creature on Earth, including us, is tuned to the Earth's magnetic field. And so whenever there's a change in the magnetic field, there is also a change within the human body. And many of these changes are hormonal in nature. Studies have shown, for example, that whenever there's a high amount of geomagnetic activity, it can cause the pineal gland, the tiny pine cone-shaped gland in the middle of the brain, just behind the eyes, to produce less melatonin than normal. And melatonin, of course, is what regulates the sleep-wake cycle. At night, when we turn off the light, the pineal gland increases its production of melatonin, and this makes us feel sleepy. In the morning, when our eyes sense light, the pineal gland decreases its production of melatonin, and therefore we feel more awake. So not only is the pineal gland sensitive to light, it's also sensitive to external electromagnetic fields. Either this is a direct sensitivity or an indirect sensitivity. But that's something I look at in the book. I'm not going to deal with that now. What matters is the fact that geomagnetic factors and, of course, artificial electromagnetic fields can suppress melatonin production and thereby disrupt the sleep-wake cycle. And having a disrupted sleep-wake cycle is, of course, what causes jet lag. Shift workers who have very disrupted sleep-wake cycles generally have much poorer health than people who don't do shift work. There is, for example, a high incidence of cancer among shift workers. And it's also important to recognize that melatonin acts as a free radical scavenger, meaning it clears up all those free radicals that cause harm to the cells of the body, consequently lowering our risk of getting cancer. There's also a link between depression and having a disrupted sleep-wake cycle. In fact, a number of studies have shown a very strong correlation between high geomagnetic activity and an increase in the suicide rate. So, to return to the question, there is very good evidence that geomagnetic disturbances can cause depression and other health problems in humans.
Are artificial electromagnetic fields having a negative impact on our well-being, in your opinion?
We, of course, are surrounded by artificial electromagnetic fields. It's one of the realities of living in the modern world, with all its technology and gadgetry. And as the world becomes more technologically sophisticated, no doubt such exposure will increase, so we can't escape it. Now, as the question of adverse health effects from artificial electromagnetic fields is a very big question, a question I deal with at length in my book, I won't attempt to answer it in full here. Let me instead present a few points. Earlier I stated that both geomagnetic disturbances and artificial electromagnetic fields can suppress production of the hormone melatonin and consequently disrupt the sleep-wake cycle. So that's certainly one mechanism whereby artificial electromagnetic fields can cause harm to the body. But could there be other mechanisms involved? Well, yes, there are, and there's one particular mechanism I wish to discuss here. Heaps of studies have shown that artificial electromagnetic fields can induce a stress response in the body, specifically a state of chronic stress which involves long-term activation of the fight or flight response. When we face a perceived danger, for example a vicious dog, the fight or flight response is activated by the autonomic nervous system, or ANS. The ANS is made up of two components, the sympathetic nervous system, or SNS, and the parasympathetic nervous system, or PSNS. The SNS activates the physiological changes that occur during the fight or flight response, whereas the PSNS dampens those responses. The SNS, for example, tells the adrenal glands to pump large quantities of adrenaline and noradrenaline into the bloodstream. The adrenal glands also secrete the steroid hormone cortisol. Normally, of course, the body returns to a state of normality once the perceived threat has passed, and so all those stress hormones disappear from the body. In other words, the fight or flight response is deactivated. However, with those people who suffer from chronic stress, the fight or flight response gets activated so often, it's more or less continuously switched on. And this is exactly what studies have found with animals that have been exposed for long periods of time to artificial electromagnetic fields. That is, a state of chronic stress or long-term activation of the fight or flight response. This means high levels of stress hormones in the bloodstream. It also means such things as a higher incidence of cancer, immune system dysfunction, and all the other health problems that result from being in a state of chronic stress, including insomnia, learning and memory difficulties, fatigue, and weakness. We know that stress has an incredibly damaging effect on the body, especially if it's prolonged. So, to sum up, the adverse health effects that result from exposure to artificial electromagnetic fields are more or less identical to the symptoms of chronic stress.
What is EHS?
Electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS, is a condition whereby one feels extremely ill when exposed to practically any form of artificial electromagnetic radiation, whether it be from a cell phone, an electric fan, a computer, etc. Interestingly, it didn't really come into existence until around the 1980s, so it's very much a recent condition, and the incidence of this condition is rapidly increasing among the population. People with this condition are sometimes forced to live in a rural environment, to not use any electrical devices or even drive a car, and to take other extreme measures in order to try and limit their exposure to artificial electromagnetic fields. So for them it's very debilitating and very serious, and it has a huge impact on their lives. Of course, it all sounds a little extreme, doesn't it? And the question naturally arises as to whether EHS is a genuine condition or whether it's merely psychosomatic. And I'll be honest, I was extremely skeptical of EHS until I started researching the matter and realized that there is some scientific research to back up the claims of EHS sufferers. I should point out too that plenty of physicians around the world do take EHS seriously and have actually gained some success in treating those with the condition. What they've discovered is that EHS seems to be an allergic reaction and therefore involves a response on the part of the immune system in a similar manner to other allergic reactions. The view of EHS as a genuine allergic reaction is backed up by the research of such people as the Swedish dermatologist Olli Johansson, where EHS is recognized as a functional impairment, as well as Dr. Rena Bray, Dominique Belpomme, and many others. So while it's easy to be skeptical of the claims of EHS sufferers and to think it's all in their heads, there is actually a firm body of research which suggests that EHS is a genuine rather than psychosomatic condition.
Louis, how do UFOs fit into electromagneticism?
In my opinion, ball lightning, earth lights, and other luminous phenomena produced by the Earth are important components of the UFO mystery. Although I remain open-minded regarding the possibility of intelligent, perhaps humanoid life forms existing on other planets, I fail to see any evidence of an extraterrestrial component to the UFO mystery, as per all those wild stories of crashed flying saucers and grey aliens abducting humans for nefarious purposes. Rather, I think the solution to the UFO mystery is entirely terrestrial in nature, and that it encompasses such things as ball lightning and other natural phenomena. I've been interested in ball lightning for many years now, and I've pored over hundreds of ball lightning reports. Ball lightning is usually a foot or so in diameter. However, there does exist both miniature ball lightning and giant ball lightning. Ball lightning is associated with thunderstorms, and it usually appears near the ground following an incident of cloud-to-ground lightning. It appears to be some form of plasma. It can appear in a variety of different colours, including red, green, blue, yellow, and so on. It's also very elusive, and is usually only seen for very brief periods of time. In most cases it vanishes within a matter of seconds, decaying either explosively or silently, and usually it gives off a hissing sound and odour resembling ozone. Ball lightning can do some amazing things that seem to contradict the known laws of physics. For example, it can pass straight through walls, it can split into smaller balls, it can bounce along the ground, roll along the ground, squeeze through keyholes, enter homes via the chimney, leave perfectly circular holes in panes of glass, and even chase people around or interact with people in a manner that suggests some rudimentary form of intelligence. Indeed, in the ball lightning literature, one is bound to find many cases of so-called intelligent ball lightning, and these cases are extremely puzzling indeed. In what ways then does ball lightning shed light on the UFO mystery? To answer this question, we need to consider the phenomenon known as Foo Fighters, those small balls of light that pursued and toyed with military aircraft during World War II. The objects are described as being identical in appearance to ball lightning, and it's conceivable that they might have been some form of ball lightning that exists only at very high altitude. It's important to consider, too, the electromagnetic nature of ball lightning. The electromagnetic fields emitted by these objects might be capable of stimulating the temporal lobes of the brain, and thereby inducing hallucinatory experiences that later get interpreted by the witness as encounters with aliens. This is not that wild a possibility when you look, say, at the research of Michael Persinger and his famous God helmet experiments. The God helmet being a device designed to stimulate the temporal lobes of the brain using magnetic fields.
Lewis, thank you so much for joining us here at the Bruce Collins Show. Lewis Proud's book is Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bruce Collins at the Bruce Collins Show. Thank you so much for joining us each and every week, Fridays at midnight on WWPR 1490 AM. We would ask that you would support all of your favorite charities that help to spread the gospel, clothe the needy, and feed the hungry. You can do that as thanks for listening to our program. We ask of no monetary payback from you, only your listenership and your dedication to making the world a better place. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Bruce Collins Show, where you can find us every Friday night at midnight here at WWPR 1490 AM. Remember, God loves you. We do too. Don't give up.